giving. We read this phrase at the top of the bulletin insert we received at the entrance of the sanctuary this morning. In this insert, there's a reference to the story from Scripture of the healing by Jesus of a bent-over woman. She was sorely afflicted over a lifetime and could only look downward as she encountered her life. Can you imagine what it would be like if all we saw was from a bent-over position? Can you imagine yourself being bent over physically or emotionally or spiritually? I can. What would we miss being bent over? And how would we feel about our life? I grew up in Northwest Ohio along Lake Erie. You might have figured that out because I have a little bit of a Midwestern twang. My father was a congregational pastor, and my mother was an elementary school teacher. The land there was flat and fertile. One could look to the horizon in 4 directions. My sisters and I loved to swim in the lake and learn to sail to the horizon on that great lake. When I was first dating Howard, later my husband, he introduced me to camping in the Adirondacks, where I first took a mountain hike. A few years later, we began to enjoy downhill skiing together. Jackson Hole in the Great Tetons was the first large resort where we skied together on vacation with friends. At first, with such majesty and such height, I was anxious and intimidated, to say the least. In fact, I do remember that was the first time that I had a temper tantrum with Howard. He was very loving, and I did come off the mountain. Now I know being in the mountains was something that expanded my horizons, literally and figuratively. Now I know how one person you love can make all the difference in how you experience life. Kathleen Norris, in her book entitled Dakota, A Spiritual Geography, I learned about a term called spiritual geography. It describes a place where we have wrestled out our story because of particular experiences and circumstances. What particularly inspires me about being near a mountain or being in a mountain range is the promise of the vista at the highest point, at the peak, at the top of the mountain. Mountains are my most inspiring spiritual geography. For some people in the church, we think of church as simply a building with a steeple, perhaps a bell tower like ours. We think of architecture created from a particular time in history. Yesterday we had a tour of the church by a member of the Historical Society in Exeter. And they spoke of this and its building as the church. For others, the church is associated with an institutional religion like the Roman Catholic Church or the United Church of Christ denomination. A place that has rules and regulations, that welcomes some, but it excludes others. It serves a purpose of perpetuating itself. As we approach making our personal commitment during the annual response campaign, Delight in Giving, I hope you will think about this church, our church,